Welcome back. Today I will talk about post-estimation analysis focusing on multicollinearity. So what I want to explain is, number one, what does it do to your regression analysis? And number two, how can we fix it? To illustrate the problem, I think the best thing you can do is to go to an extreme. So as an example, you see this on the slide. If I assume that there are two independent variables denoted x and z, and these variables have a perfect linear relationship, we can express x in terms of z with a factor a. Then this regression model can be rearranged as you see below, just by putting x equal to az into the equation. And you already notice very quickly that if you now try to estimate the coefficients, the beta coefficient, the gamma coefficient, so these so-called slope coefficients, it would be quite difficult to do. So whenever you change z, by default x is changing because these two are perfectly related. So it's quite difficult to assess the so-called partial impact of x on y or z on y. So your precision of the estimation becomes quite limited. Of course, that's an extreme example of a so-called collinear relationship where you have a perfect relationship. In practice, it's not as strong, but there might be still a positive or a negative relationship between two or more independent variables. And the main consequence and the main problem is a lack of precision of your so-called point estimates. Now, the point estimates are the estimates of the coefficients in your model, so that's your slope coefficients. They are impacted by multicollinear relationships. So ideally, when we want to run a regression analysis, we want to make sure that our independent variables are not strongly related among each other. Of course, in practice, it's very, very common that you have a degree of relationship, and this you have to accept to some extent. Now, how to fix it? That depends on many different factors. Number one, sometimes you could simply increase sample size. And sample size does matter. So if you have a very big sample, you can cope with a certain degree of multicollinearity because you still get a decent level of precision out of it. But of course, it's not always possible to do this. The most obvious thing to do very often is simply to drop variables that are strongly related and to think very carefully about your measurement. As an example, if you want to see the impact of household size on disposable income, and you also put in the number of children in your household as an additional exploratory variable, obviously household size and number of children, they are not independent, they are correlated. So you have to think very carefully whether you want to have both of these measures in the same model, because they might interact and they might make it difficult to estimate the true relationship you want to estimate. There are more advanced methods which I won't cover in this course, which is a beginner's course, which then goes into what you call factor analysis or reducing dimensions. There's also a whole literature there in machine learning that explores ways to reduce dimensions of various measures. Quite important in certain areas. As an example, for instance, if you want to study the diet of people. People eat hundreds and maybe thousands of food items, and they tend to be highly correlated. In this case, using ways to kind of compress the information is essential for any analysis. Again, you can leave some comments below if you want to explore this further. I certainly will do this in a more advanced course. Good, so how do we detect multicollinearity? How do we do it? the most obvious thing to do is to look at a correlation matrix, which we have done in a previous session when we explored the data. So there is no perfect rule, honestly speaking, but if you see a correlation coefficient in absolute value that is larger than 0.85, I would be concerned. Definitely, I would be concerned. So it could be either minus 0.85 and less, or above 0.85. So both having a positive and negative strong relationship has an impact. The other thing which I tend to use is called the variance inflation factor. So this is a slightly different analysis. The benefit of that is it also permits that a combination of independent variables might explain one independent variable. So that's the idea. If you look at the correlation alone, you only look always at two variables and their linear relationship. Yeah. So if you do the variance inflation factors, you can look at a combination of variables that might explain another variable. So what you basically do is you run further regressions on your independent variables, and you try to explain one independent variable using all the other independent variables. And you do this for all the variables in your model. You obtain an R-squared from these regressions, and then you calculate the variance inflation factor by taking 1 divided by 1 minus the R-squared. Yeah. So put differently, if your R-squared is very, very high, it means that almost every information you get from this independent variable is already contained in the other set of independent variables. So the added value of this independent variable is quite limited. That's the idea behind it. As a rule of thumb, if you get a variance inflation factor in excess of 5, I would be careful. Some researchers go as high as 10, but honestly 5 would already ring alarm bells. So these are the variance inflation factors. So these are the things I would look for, and now I move into Stata, and we have a little exercise and example. Again, I put all the data and the do files into the GitHub, which you find below in the description. I now opened a data set of commodity prices. I don't want to really do some proper modeling of commodity prices here, I just want to illustrate the idea of multicollinearity. So I don't do any proper modeling, I violate quite a few rules, but it's just to illustrate this one point without going into further details. So first of all, I want to explain in a regression model the price of silver. So I just put in here price S, which is the silver price, using the production of silver and using the production of gold, because there is a relationship between gold and silver prices which goes back hundreds of years, has been discussed in many academic papers. So that's the regression models. If you execute that, you see that I can explain roughly about 62%, which is pretty good, isn't it? Yeah, and you see that silver production has a positive and significant impact on silver prices. Again, if you don't remember anymore, go back to the video on regression analysis. Production of gold has a negative impact, which is interesting, which is also significant. So your first impression would be that both of these production measures are significant, but they go into opposite directions. This would be your first impression. Yeah. Looking at your observations, you have a decent sample size, you have a decent degree of freedom. Again, if you don't know what degree of freedom is, there is a video on that as well. So that doesn't look too bad. However, what if these two variables are related? We can just check. We just do a correlation in this case. Yeah, let's look at this production of gold, production of silver, and you see a very, very high correlation between the two. Yeah, it's 0.929. So that is definitely way above our kind of limit of 0.85, so that would definitely concern me. Yeah, so it's almost a perfect relationship. What you then can also do is you can run the variance inflation factor. So it's just VIF, which you put after you do your regression analysis, which we have done. And you see here that we get the same message. In this particular case, anyway, we just have two variables, so this is what you would expect. And we get a variance inflation factor in excess of 5. So this would also indicate trouble. So what do you do about this? Yeah. So what I would do about this is I would simply run two models. So I would run the first model, only focus on production of silver. Here you have a positive and significant relationship. You can explain a fair amount of your silver price. And of course, which we don't cover, there might be some more complex things going on over time. Yeah, but this is something more advanced. So that's the first thing. And then I would run again the same model, but with gold production separately. And what you see now, which might astonish you, you get now a positive coefficient all of a sudden. Yeah, it explains less. It's what you would expect because it's a different commodity. But most crucially, the coefficient, the sign flipped. Yeah, from something minus to something positive. And the reason for that is because of this relationship between gold and silver production. Yeah, these two cannot be easily separated. So the best approach you can take in this setting is to run the model separately and discuss this relationship. There's more advanced stuff you can do, but we cover this in courses that are not for beginners in this particular case. Good, I see you in